Pallavi has come after a long time and Tuesday is Pallavi's day. So do you have the text with you?
Yes,
Pallavi?
Rangada. Yes, Rangada.
Okay, go ahead, read. But none of these achievements.
But none of these achievements is enough for one who seeks the wide completeness of an integral yoga. An individual salvation is not enough for him, for he finds himself opening to a cosmic consciousness which far exceeds by its breadth and vastness the narrower intensity of a limited individual fulfillment, and its call is imperative. Driven by that immense compulsion, he must break through all separative boundaries, spread himself in world nature, contain the universe. Above, too, there is urgent upon him a dynamic realization pressing from the Supreme upon this world of beings. And only some encompassing and exceeding of the cosmic consciousness can release into manifestation here that yet unlavished splendor. But the cosmic consciousness too is not sufficient, for it is not all the divine reality, not integral. There is a divine secret behind personality that he must discover. There, waiting in it to be delivered here into time, stands the mystery of the embodiment of the transcendence. In the cosmic consciousness, there remains at the end a hiatus, an unequal equation of a highest knowledge that can liberate but not effectuate, with a power seeming to use a limited knowledge or masking itself with a surface ignorance that can create but creates imperfection or a perfection transient, limited and in fetters. On one side, there is a free, undynamic witness, and on the other side, a bound executrix of action who has not been given all the means of action. The reconciliation of these companions and opposites seems to be reserved, postponed, held back in an unmanifest, still beyond us. But again, a mere escape into some absolute transcendence leaves personality unfulfilled and the universal action inconclusive, and cannot satisfy the integral seeker. He feels that the truth that is forever is a power that creates as well as a stable existence. It is not a power solely of illusory or ignorant manifestation. The eternal truth can manifest its truths in time. It can create in knowledge and not only in unconscious and ignorance. A divine descent, no less than an ascent of the divine, is possible. There is a prospect of the bringing down of a future perfection in a present deliverance. As his knowledge widens, it becomes for him more and more evident that it was this for which the Master of Works cast down the soul within him here as a spark of his fire into the darkness, that it may grow there into a center of the light that is forever.
Okay, a very interesting para, and we have to recognize all the words that he's saying, okay? Because the experiences are extremely clear. So, I'll just give you the background of what he's saying, and then we will read it, become very clear. He is saying that normally, in India at least, the liberation is supposed to be enough of a spiritual attainment. The soul comes out of the body mind life, goes to level 2 of the spiritual planes of consciousness, and there gets liberation, and finished. That's enough. No more rebirth and no more trouble of coming back into the physical world with the birth. And again, all that subjection to pain, suffering, and all this thing will not be there. Certainly saying that's not enough for the interior yoga. And also I'll remind you that when the soul, the human soul, goes into the spiritual levels of consciousness, two things are possible. He says that there is a lifetime. To reach them though, you have to have a lot of knowledge about what he's saying in other places also. I remind you that he says that when you make your mind silent, or even without that, if you go to the spiritual plane of consciousness, two things can happen. Actually, three. Okay? The first thing is you enter into a consciousness which is a self, and that is featureless, infinite, eternal, and static. Okay? There is no movement there. And you see the physical world as unreal. This is the normal experience that people get. So, and that is so real that the physical world with all its movement and forms and limitations appears to be unreal. So you are very satisfied. But there are other things that can happen. You can get into the cosmic consciousness. And then the world is not unreal to you, and you are one with everybody else. That's a cosmic consciousness. So these two are normally called Nirguna Brahman. The Nirguna Brahman is you enter into the featurelessness of the self. So since it is featureless, okay, which means that there are no characteristics, it is Nirguna. Guna means characteristics. Okay, here in this particular case. So you enter into a place where the Nirguna Brahman, absolutely static, without any, but absolutely real, without any characteristics. That's a Nirguna Brahman. But as I said, if you have the cosmic consciousness, it is Saguna Brahman. You see the divine everywhere and you are one with everybody. Okay? That also is far superior a realization than the self. But even that is not enough to everything. Why? Because when you have the cosmic consciousness or even the self, what happens is that you are free. But the power to change the lower is not there. That is the reason why everybody opts to reject the physical world and go away. Okay? Even in the cosmic consciousness, you see the imperfections of the level 1. Okay? You see the imperfections. But they seem to be permanent. You can't do anything about it. But you accept them very calmly, quietly, without any disturbance and without any emotions, neither good nor bad. So this, when I am saying, is not good enough. Okay? So this is the background. Clear? Very clear. When you go from level 1 to level 2, you enter into level 2, which is either the cosmic consciousness, which is the Saguna Brahman, or the Nirguna consciousness, which is the self. The self is the, as I repeat, featureless, immutable, eternal, infinite, and completely free. You are free from the body, mind. Now we'll read each sentence and we'll see how it is inadequate. Okay? But none of these achievements is good enough for one who seeks the wide completeness of an interior yoga. So all these things at the spiritual level are not enough for the sadhaka of the interior yoga. An individual salvation is not enough for him. This is the first thing that Sringa finds not good enough. Individual salvation. One human soul gets delivered and goes away, but what about all the others suffering? It does not solve the problem at a collective level. It solves the problem only for the individual. And that's not good enough for Sringa. An individual salvation is not enough for him, for he finds himself opening to a cosmic consciousness which far exceeds by its breadth and vastness the narrower intensity of a limited individual fulfillment. The cosmic consciousness is the Saguna Brahman, and the narrow intensity of a limited individual fulfillment is the Nirguna Brahman. And it's called imperative. Driven by that immense compulsion, he must break through all separated boundaries, spread himself in world nature, contain the universe. So, when you have the Nirguna Brahman, you are completely separated from the physical world. The physical world is unreal, and even if it is real, in the cosmic consciousness, even if it is real, it is imperfect. Okay? So, Sringa is saying, from the realization of the soul in the self, you must be able to break all separated boundaries. In the Nirguna Brahman, you are separated from the physical world, but that should go away. Okay? Spread himself in God nature. God nature, level 1. You have to come down and become one with the everybody. Feel the oneness in everything. And you have to contain the universe. The universe was inside your consciousness. Either you are, the whole universe is inside you, which is the comprehending consciousness, or if you find yourself to be in everything, that's the apprehending consciousness. Sometimes this can happen, sometimes that can happen, but of course, Shiva wants both together. Okay? In other words, you are inside as well as outside. The whole universe is inside you, and you are in the universe individually in everything. Okay? This is what Shiva wants. Now, again, even more, above 2, that means not only going below, the level 2 is something in between level 3 and level 1. In level 1, you are ignorant. Okay? The soul is seeing the many, thinking it is real, and sees everybody separately. It sees separation because of the ego. Okay? You see everybody else as separate from you. They are not the same. But in the cosmic consciousness, you feel that the form is separate, but the essence is the same. My soul and your soul is essentially the same. Okay? That's what you feel in the cosmic consciousness. But that also is not enough. That's what Shiva is saying. And now there's something above you, third level. Okay? That's what he's saying. Above 2, above the spiritual level. Okay? There is urgent upon him a dynamic realization. The realization of the self is not dynamic, it is static. Okay? There you are in a position where it is not, there is no movement and you have no power over the lower. Okay? That's what he means by static. But he is saying above, in the third level, there is a dynamic realization. That means the power to change the lower is also there. First of all, individually, and you have also the capacity to spread it outwards. Later on, there is urgent. The word urgent is interesting. Okay? Here, it means compelling immediate action. Anything that compels immediate action is urgent. Okay? So you have to see it in that. Alright? There is urgent upon him a dynamic realization. Actually, Shiva is talking about his own experiences because he has been told already in jail that there is supermind in which there is possibility of changing the lower. Power is there. Okay? But when he had the experience of the overmind consciousness, the power was lacking. So he knew there's something else. That's why he used the word urgent. Okay? Upon him, a dynamic realization pressing from the Supreme upon this world of beings. World of beings, level 1. Only some encompassing and exceeding of the cosmic consciousness can release into manifestation here that yet unlavished splendor. So cosmic consciousness is level 2, but you have to go beyond that, exceed the cosmic consciousness and go to level 3. Okay? That can release into manifestation here that yet unlavished splendor. Not the word lavished. Okay? So, not only a peace and calm, but power, beauty, love, okay, ananda, all these things become lavish splendor. In the level 2, that lavishness is not there. Is normally either this or that. Peace and freedom are there in everybody, and there is sort of inclusion and a little bit of ananda also is there in the cosmic consciousness, but no power to change the level. So that's what he wants. Go to the third level because he is exceeding the cosmic consciousness. Go to the third level and release the manifestation here that yet unlavished splendor. So that unlavished splendor, one of the things is the power. The power to do things in the physical world. But the cosmic consciousness too is not sufficient. Okay? For it is not all the divine reality, not integral. There is a divine secret behind personality that he must discover. Behind personality also there is something. So you must discover that. There, waiting in it to be delivered here into time, stands a mystery of the embodiment of the transcendence. The embodiment of the transcendence. So, that means the transcendence can be embodied. Okay? So that's it. This is on the supermental plane. In the cosmic consciousness, there remains at the end a hiatus. A hiatus is a gap, okay? A difference, a gulf, an unequal equation of a highest knowledge that can liberate but not effectuate with a power, seeming to use a limited knowledge or masking itself with a surface ignorance that can create but creates imperfection or a perfection transient, limited, and in fetters. Now, let's look very clearly at what he's saying and interpret what he's doing, what he's saying. In the cosmic consciousness, the cosmic consciousness, as I told you, is level 2. You feel yourself to be in everybody, and everybody also, you feel yourself that they are in you. Okay? That's a cosmic consciousness. There remains a gap. You see, there's a gap, there's a gulf. And what is that gulf? An unequal equation of the highest knowledge that can liberate but not effectuate. So that it will give you freedom, okay? It will give you peace, but it will not effectuate with a power seeming to use a limited knowledge. So what it means is that if you are at that level 2, if you come down to level 1, you are back to your normal imperfect nature. What you have realized at level 2, you cannot make it real at level 1. That's what it means by imperfect. Okay? So it can liberate you, it give you freedom, but doesn't give you power, right, to change the law. Or seeming to use a limited knowledge, okay, or masking itself with a surface ignorance that can create, but creates imperfection or a perfection transient, limited in fetters. So the power to create in the even up to the overmind level is there, but the creation is not perfect. Okay? In other words, what he's saying is that even in higher mind, eleven mind, intuitive mind, overmind, which is level 2, there is some amount of power. Because without power you can't create. So when he's saying that there is a power to create, some power is there, but it's not full. It creates, it doesn't create perfection. That perfection creation can come only from level 3. Okay? That's what he's saying very clearly. And that level 3 is the supermind. Supermind, supermental, Gnostic consciousness, or truth consciousness. This is what you mean by level 3. Okay? And when you are in the cosmic consciousness, as he says, you can use a limited knowledge, not the full knowledge, knowledge at level 2, not level 1, or masking itself with a surface ignorance that can create but creates imperfection. The power to effectuate things in the physical world is not full. Okay? Or a perfection transient. If you are lucky, even some perfect things you may be able to create, but they are transient. They come into being and then disappear. Limited and in fetters. Fetters, chains. And now, on one side, there is a free, undynamic witness. What is this? Very clear. Free, undynamic, that means static. Witness, sakshi. There is the experience of the self. So, sometimes I find that people who read newly, they have difficulties with the conception of the self. So, you must be very, very clear what the self is. The self is a consciousness in which you enter. The soul enters into that consciousness. And it feels itself to be free. Free because it's not there in the body mind. What is freedom? All of us, we have to drink water when we are thirsty. That's a slavery. We have to eat when we are hungry. Okay? Then when there is a desire, we have to satisfy it. That's a slavery. So, but they are free. None of these things apply to the soul, which is in the self. And the self also you find that you are not located in any one place. There is the self. So, free, infinite, eternal, you realize that you have always existed and you will always exist in the future. So, featureless, static, infinite, eternal. This is the self. Okay? But no power. Okay? So, look at the words carefully, you see. So, then free, undynamic, static, no power. Witness, we are only watching everything. Understanding, knowledge is there, but no power. On the other side, is the bound executrix of action. Now, this is the cosmic consciousness. It's bound, okay? Because not fully, you can't execute fully. Okay? A bound executive action who has not yet been given all the means of action. That's a cosmic concept. He is comparing these two. The reconciliation of these companions and opposites seem to be reserved, postponed, held back in an unmanifest skill beyond us. That's level 3. So if you go to level 3, reconciliation of these companions. What are the companions? Saguna, Nirguna. The cosmic consciousness and the self. Saguna, Nirguna. They seem to be reserved, postponed, held back in an unmanifest skill beyond us. I remind you that when Swami had the experience of the overmind consciousness, we found that the physical world is not unreal. Prakriti is real, but Purusha also is there, but they are separate. They are not one. If you go to the supramental level, they become one. So, now it's clear. So, that's what it is. Even at the highest level of spiritual consciousness, there is a difference between consciousness and force. Purusha, Chit and Shakti. They are separate, they are not one. Okay? So that's what he's saying. The reconciliation of these companions. So you can see these companions are Purusha, Prakriti, or you can say Saguna, Nirguna, or you can say also Chit and Shakti. Okay? They have to be reconciled, they have to become one. Is reserved, postponed, and held back in an unmanifest skill beyond us, which is supernatural. But again, a mere escape into some absolute transcendence leaves personality unfulfilled and the universal action inconclusive and cannot satisfy the interior seeker. Now, what is this mere escape into absolute transcendence? That's even the individual soul is dissolved and goes away. That's a Buddhistic path. But that also is not enough because it leaves personality unfulfilled. The personality, the body mind life in the lower level, we are rejecting, we are not fulfilling it. That's what it says. And the universal action, inconclusive. Universal action inconclusive means that there is no evolution, that the physical world is permanently imperfect. That's what it means. The universal action inconclusive and cannot satisfy the interior seeker. He feels that the truth that is forever is a power. He feels that there is something missing. Okay? Then he even enters into the overmind consciousness, something is missing. Where is the power to change things below? He feels that the truth that is forever, is supramental consciousness. The truth that is eternal and permanent is a power that creates as well as a stable existence. It's a power that creates dynamic. Stable existence, static, not dynamic. Both can be there at the third level, which is the truth that is forever. And the truth that is forever is the Superman. It's not a power solely of illusory or ignorant manifestation. It's not a power solely of illusory, that means Maya. Maya is the apara prakriti. It's a prakriti which creates transient forms. But in the supermind, it is not a power which creates illusion or ignorant manifestation. It creates a reality. The eternal truth can manifest its truths in time. It can create at the third level. Normally, you would think that The world is imperfect, permanent. But that's what Swami is pointing out. The eternal truth, which is the eternal truth, the third level, can manifest its truth in time. It can do so. Don't think that the physical world is permanently imperfect. It can create in knowledge and not only in inconscience and ignorance. So what does it mean? You are creating in inconscience and ignorance spiritual levels of consciousness. But it can create in knowledge with a K. That's the third level. When it creates in knowledge, we are not creating illusions, we are creating reality. So that's so important to understand the words that he is using. Creation in knowledge and not creation in ignorance and inconscience. Creation in ignorance and inconscience is level 2, spiritual planes of consciousness. But it is so satisfying that people are easily contented. A divine descent, no less than an ascent to the divine, is possible. So, what do we mean? A divine descent, the coming down of divine qualities into the physical world and changing them. Because when the divine descends, he will not be satisfied with imperfection, so he will make it fine. So many men, and note the word divine descent, D-cap, okay? Full of power. It can change things below. A divine descent, no less than ascent to the divine is possible. When you are ascending to the level 2, you are leaving behind your body mind life. Okay? You are leaving it separately and going away. So, at the third level, you can go yourself and your soul can enjoy the knowledge and power and everything, but also you have the choice of bringing all these things down into the level 1. That's what he wanted. The eternal truth can manifest. If you read in the correct stress, then you can understand what he's saying. The eternal truth can manifest its truth in time. Don't think like the ones who are in the spiritual level that it cannot. Okay? That's what the Mahavadins say and others. They say, if you want the divine, you have to go up there. You can't get the divine here. Instead, they make a statement which is contradictory to that. A divine descent, no less than an ascent to the divine, is possible. There is a prospect of the bringing down of a future perfection and a present deliverance. What does he mean by present deliverance? Just 1 second. Present here means not in time but in space, because present and future are expressions in time. But here, present means not absent. Okay. You have to understand very clearly. That's why I have marked. I have given a stress on present. So what does it mean by present deliverance? It is present in the lower consciousness. Okay? That future perfection, when it comes down, it will not be transient. It will be a deliverance which is permanently present. That's what it means. Okay? So, very clear. The comment I have noted down is very correct. Yes, as his knowledge widens, it becomes for him more and more evident that it was for this, for which the Master of Works cast down the soul within him, here as a spark of his fire into the darkness, that it might grow there into the center of the life that is forever. The light that is forever is in the spiritual planes of consciousness, but if it has to come down to the physical world, it has to come down from level 3. So, very clear what he's saying. The spiritual aim of life in India is not enough for surrender. You have to go to the third level and change things in the seemingly imperfect physical world. That is what surrender wants. And it can be done if you go to the third level. Okay? It took a long time to go into this, but it's worth it. Because all the words that he's saying, you have to identify the words, and that's what we did. I hope it is clear, because it takes a good deal of time to understand his language. Anyway, so that's it. For instance, see the word present. It has nothing to do with past and future. Present means Suppose a roll call is there and you say, yes, sir, I am present. That's what it means here. Present means that in the physical world, the perfection can be present. That's what it means. Okay. Now we can read the next one. This one Pallavi read. So the next one, Tarika, you have the text, you can read if you want.
Yeah, Ranganath.
Okay, go ahead. Read
The transcendent, the universal, the individual are three powers overreaching, underlying and penetrating the whole manifestation. This is the first of the Trinities. In the unfolding of consciousness also, these are the three fundamental terms, and none of them can be neglected if we would have the experience of the whole truth of existence. Out of the individual, we wake into a vaster, freer cosmic consciousness. But out of the universal too, with its complex of forms and powers, we must emerge by a still greater self-exceeding into a consciousness without limits that is founded on the absolute. And yet, in this ascension, we do not really abolish but take up and transfigure what we seem to leave. For there is a height where the three live eternally in each other. On that height, they are blissfully joined in a nodus of their harmonized oneness. But that summit is above the highest and largest spiritualized mentality. Even if some reflection of it can be experienced there, mind, to attain to it, to live there, must exceed itself and be transformed into a supramental Gnostic light, power and substance. In this lower diminished consciousness, a harmony can indeed be attempted, but it must always remain imperfect. A coordination is possible, not a simultaneous fused fulfillment. An ascent out of the mind is, for any greater realization, imperative. Or else there must be, with the ascent of consequent to it, a dynamic descent of the self-existent truth that exists always uplifted in its own light above mind, eternal, prior to the manifestation of life and matter.
Okay, very interesting para. Again, the words we have to understand exactly what it is. So, I speak all the time of three levels. Very clearly, is telling you what those three levels are. Okay? The transcendent, the highest. Okay? The universal, the second, level 2. The individual, level 3. Okay? These are the three powers overarching, underlying, and penetrating. Now we have to understand what is meant by these words. Okay? So the words are so interesting. So think about it, overarching. Okay? Very clearly, it refers to the transcendent. And then underlying in the universe, the divine presence is there behind everything. Therefore, underlying refers to the universal. And penetrating, that means the divine is there in everything. And that's the individual. So you see how he uses words. It becomes really like solving a mathematical problem, okay? And it gives you great joy when you find out what he's saying. So he's using different words to describe these, overarching the transcendent, above the universe, okay? Underlying, the divine presence is there in everything in the physical world, stones and trees and animals and everywhere. Underlying, it is there. That's the universal, level 2. And penetrating, in each one, even in stones and all, the divine presence is there inside. Okay? It penetrates. That's the individual, the whole manifestation. So these are the three powers. Okay? So Shem is wanting you to go to the third power. But don't get confused. Sometimes the word transcendent is used in another sense also. Because when you are at this level 2, you can get snatches, you can get glimpses of the transcendent. When you are in the self, the consciousness is transcendent because you are outside the universe. So it is transcendent. So these things you must think very, very logically. Okay? even in the lower planes of consciousness, the higher planes can be reflected. So you have to use the word reflection. Okay? So this is the first of the trinities. There are many other trinities. Okay? For instance, he uses the word trinity and dualities. Trinities, for instance, knowledge, knower, known, and knowledge. That's a trinity. Okay? Love, lover, and loved. That's a trinity. Okay? So these are all the trinity that is talking about. In the unfolding of consciousness also, there are these three fundamental terms, and none of them can be neglected if we would have the experience of the whole truth of existence. So, first of all, he has told you that they are universal. The transcendent, the universal, and the individual are universal planes. Now he is saying in the unfolding of consciousness, that's in the individual. When he is doing a yoga, slowly his consciousness is unfolding itself. These are the three fundamental terms, and none of them can be neglected if you would have the experience of the whole truth of existence. If you don't want the whole truth and you are satisfied with level 2, part truth, fine, no problem. But if you are a yogi of this integral yoga, you have to have all the three. And all the three not successively, not consecutively, but simultaneously. That's the thing. Okay? You have to experience the whole truth of existence. Out of the individual, we wake into a vaster, freer cosmic consciousness, level 2. Okay? But out of the universal 2, with its complex of forms and powers, we must emerge by a still greater self-exceeding into a consciousness without limits that is founded on the absolute level 3. So, this is what Shendra is saying. Okay? We go beyond the words and understand each word. He is talking of the 3 levels. You are in ignorance, level 1. You are in liberated consciousness, level 2. But you go to level 3, you have the power to change everything. Okay? And yet in this ascension, we do not really abolish, but take up, transfigure what we seem to live. Now, this reveals contribution because the normal aim in yoga in India was to ascend and abolish the lower. Abolish the body mind life and don't bother about it at all. In time it will disappear, but your soul is there and that's enough. So, and yet in this ascension, we do not really abolish, but take up and transfigure what seems to live. Okay? You seem to have left your body mind life, but you are actually you have the capacity to transform that also. For there is a height where the 3 live eternally in each other. That's a level 3. Okay? And on that height, they are blissfully joined in a nodus of their harmonized oneness. In other words, in this supramental, you can experience the transcendental, the cosmic, and the individual altogether, simultaneously. But that summit is above the highest and largest spiritualized mentality. You know the words? Spiritualized mentality, level 2. Okay? Even if some reflection of it can be experienced there. So they very clearly is telling you that even this level 2 of the spiritualized consciousness, some reflection of the supermind can be experienced. Okay? So, mind to attain to it. When he is speaking of mind here, he is speaking of the spiritual mind, okay? Not the normal mind of man. Okay? Mind to attain to it, to live there, must exceed itself and be transformed into a supramental Gnostic light. Power and substance. No. Simply Gnostic light won't do. There must be power and substance also. Not the word substance, huh? It's very interesting. We think that this substance is only at a physical level. No, there is substance everywhere. Even the highest level, sat, is substance. It is something so subtle, and that substance is itself knowledge, and that substance is itself power, and that substance is itself also ananda. Okay? You will see again and again he is talking of substance, and you must know that substance is there at all levels. At the highest level, the divine is not substanceless. He is substance. And that is why the purity of the substance matters so much. In our work, the substance is impure, and when you purify it, okay, then you can go to the second level. The grades, okay, subtle, gross, grosser, grossest. Okay, it's the substance that gets purified. Then, in this lower diminished consciousness, which is the one he's talking about, lower diminished consciousness is level 2, okay, not level 1. In this lower diminished consciousness, the harmony can indeed be attempted. In other words, the harmony between what? Between Chit and Shakti, between Purusha and Prakriti, between power and knowledge, okay, it can be attempted. But it must always remain imperfect. Okay? Purusha and Prakriti, you may experience it sometimes temporarily as one, because by reflection of the third level in. But it will remain imperfect, not permanent. A coordination is possible, not a simultaneous fuse fulfillment. Now look at that. A coordination is possible. In other words, consciousness and power, Chit and Shakti, or Purusha and Prakriti, you can combine in these spiritual planes of consciousness. But simultaneously fuse fulfillment, they are becoming absolutely one, is not possible at level 2. For that, you have to go to level 3. Okay? And ascent out of the mind is, for any greater realization, imperative. Ascent out of mind, spiritual level of consciousness, level 2, you have to go to level 3. For any greater realization, is imperative. Or else, there must be, with the ascent and consequently, a dynamic descent of the self-existent truth that exists always, uplifted in its own light above mind, eternal, prior to the manifestation of life and matter. So, there is first of all matter, then there is life, there is mind, and there is supermind. So, in the interior yoga, you have to go right up to supermind and not be satisfied with the spiritual planes of spiritualized mental substance. That's what he's saying. Okay? So, it is very interesting, and I hope I have been clear in explaining the terms that Sridhar uses. Okay? If any questions are there, we can have discussions on that, because there's no response from all of you. So, some questions may arise. Okay? So, when these questions arise, we can discuss them. Then it becomes really interesting. Otherwise, it becomes abstract. Okay? So,
This chapter was very heavy, is very heavy.
yeah, but if you
Guide us.
understand, it can be made very, very simple. If you remind me to next time, before we do the life divine, very clearly, I just very briefly tell you the figure. Even now, I can do that before my student has not yet come. What Chandra is saying is that there are 3 levels. Level 1, we are in a normal consciousness. You, me, and everybody else. Okay? 90% of humanity. We are imperfect. We see the physical world as real. We see the physical world as real. We see the separation. All of you are separate from me. This is level 1. That's why it is ignorance. Okay? Avidya. There is no difference, but we see difference. Level 2, spiritual plane of consciousness. This separation has gone because the ego is not there anymore. Okay? So level 2. But there is no power. Third level, there is power, ananda, and everything, and you can change the physical world. This is basically what he's saying. And Shrenda wants you to go right to the third level. Okay? If you go to the words, it becomes a little heavy. But if you decide for the words, it is not that heavy. Okay? Au revoir, everybody. Have a nice day.
Au revoir. Bonne journée, Ranganath. Merci beaucoup.
Thank you, Rangada.
Thank you, Rangada.